They say most betrayals don't hit like a G*NSH*T. They unfold in slow motion, quiet, almost polite. That's how it started with Lily. Not with a fight, not with a lie I could slam down like evidence, but with something gentler. Too gentle. Like a door left slightly ajar. It was the night of the gallery's annual charity gala. Lily had been prepping for weeks, working late, coordinating floral arrangements, confirming donors. She was in her element, charming, polished, always a step ahead. She'd chosen a navy silk dress for the occasion, elegant and simple, with her hair pulled into a loose knot that framed her face in that way that made people stop mid-sentence when she walked into a room. I arrived about 40 minutes in later than I'd planned. I'd gone out of my way that afternoon to pick up a gift. Our anniversary wasn't officially for another 3 days, but I'd found something that felt right. A gold pendant from the 1930s, carved with soft etchings of stars and vines. It reminded me of her, of how she used to read antique catalogs on rainy afternoons and circle the pieces she loved like she was making some secret wish list for a life she didn't expect to live. The place was humming when I walked in. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed from one corner of the room to the next, and chamber music flowed softly through overhead speakers. The gallery was one of those modern industrial spaces with exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling windows. But tonight it was dressed up in velvet and candlelight. I scanned the room for Lily. She stood near the bar, smiling, glowing, really talking to a man I didn't recognize. Gray suit, well-fitted. He looked expensive. The kind of guy who probably wore a watch that cost more than my first car. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Lily's job meant being around donors, artists, city board members. She was good at it, disarmingly warm and attentive, a natural people reader. But then I saw it. His hand, lightly grazing hers. Nothing overt. Just a subtle touch that lingered too long. A second longer than it should have. It wasn't what he did, it was what she didn't do. She didn't pull away. She leaned in and he said something low, right into her ear. Her eyes didn't dart. Her shoulders didn't stiffen. She laughed, quietly. Then she said something back. Something I couldn't hear, but I could see the look on her face. It wasn't just amusement. It was closeness, familiarity. Then she saw me, and just like that, everything changed. Her expression lifted into surprise, a well-rehearsed brightness. Her body shifted subtly, angling herself toward me and away from him. She touched his arm lightly. A goodbye? A signal? And crossed the room with a smile like I was the only man in the world. Dan, she said, kissing me on the cheek, quick but soft. You're early. I missed you, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I held out the small velvet box. Her eyes lit up, just for a moment. You didn't, she said, opening it. She held the pendant up to the light. This is beautiful, she said, her voice warm, measured. You always find the most thoughtful things. I clipped it around her neck for her. It hung just below her collarbone. She adjusted it slightly, her fingers brushing the chain. Tell me this isn't antique, she said, half joking. 1937, I told her. French. The dealer said it came from an estate in Marseilles. She gave a little sigh and pressed her hand over it. It's perfect, she said. Thank you. We stood like that for a few seconds. I watched her face closely, trying to read the lines between her gratitude and something else. Something quieter. Was it guilt? Or am I just the kind of man who invents his own heartbreak? Later, over glasses of Prosecco and polite chatter with other couples, I circled back. That guy you were talking to when I came in. Who was that? She didn't miss a beat. Oh, Miles? He's from Seattle. Works with one of the gallery's West Coast sponsors. They're helping fund the new sculpture garden. We were talking about shipping logistics. Super boring, I promise. She laughed, waved a hand like the whole thing was tedious. Then she leaned in and whispered, he's actually kind of a nightmare. Way too involved for someone who's just signing checks. I smiled, nodded, tried to mirror her casualness. But in the back of my mind, I kept rewinding. The way she'd tilted her head. The way her mouth moved when she said something I couldn't hear. the subtle urgency in the way she leaned toward him just before she noticed me. There's a difference between professional charm and personal warmth. I'd seen Lily do both. I knew the line, and that night she blurred it. When we got home, she was affectionate. Unusually so. She poured me a drink, curled up against me on the couch, asked if we could watch one of our old comfort movies. The ones we used to put on in our first apartment, with the tiny couch and the creaky radiator and the grocery store wine. She laughed too easily at my dumb jokes, played with the chain of the pendant while I talked, as if she were reminding me, "See, I wear your love around my neck." And for a moment I wanted to believe it was just that. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was reading into things. Maybe she really had been talking about logistics with a fussy donor from Seattle. But something had changed. Or maybe it had already changed, and I was just now noticing. A few days later, I found myself thinking back on that moment again. The hand that stayed too long. The whisper. The way her smile arrived a second too late. A performance, maybe, but not one I'd been invited to watch. And what stuck with me most wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't. She never asked me if I'd noticed anything. Never explained what she whispered. Never mentioned Miles again. It was as if the moment had been smoothed over, repackaged into something harmless. Neat, elegant, like her. But deep down, I'd already started running the mental math. Not proof, not yet, but a pattern, a shift, a question that wouldn't go away. Was that the first clue? Or just the first one I was willing to see? After the gala, things didn't fall apart. They tilted. Just a little at first. Just enough for me to notice something was off, like a painting hung slightly crooked on a wall you've walked past 100 times but never truly seen until it shifts. For a while, I convinced myself I was imagining it. I told myself marriages go through phases, people get distant, work gets stressful. I repeated those things in my head like a mantra every time something felt off. But the truth was, I was building a mental file. Tiny moments, strange comments, behaviors that didn't match the Lily I thought I knew. The version of her I had built my life around. Started small. She started taking calls in the bathroom. Not often, not obviously, but enough. Once or twice at first, then more regularly. And when I'd knock to tell her dinner was ready, she'd always say the same thing, "Just a sec." The tone was always light, casual. But the delay between her response and the sound of the water running always stuck with me. Like she needed that half-beat to shut something down. Then there was the perfume. I couldn't name the scent, but it was different, less floral than what she used to wear. Sharper, muskier. It clung to her scarf and her winter coat. I noticed it the night she got back late from what she called a last-minute donor dinner. She slipped off her coat and kissed me on the cheek, and that unfamiliar scent lingered in the air long after she went upstairs. I remember asking, as gently as I could, "New perfume?" She paused barely and said, "Oh yeah, sample from work. One of the interns brought in a bunch from a product launch." Then she changed the subject before I could ask anything else. But it didn't stop there. Her makeup changed too. Subtly, like she was trying something new without acknowledging it. Her lipstick was darker, her eyeliner more defined. The kind of change a woman doesn't make unless she's either trying to reclaim something or trying to be noticed by someone who already has. She also got better at disappearing. Weekend afternoons used to mean grocery shopping together, lunch at that little bakery we both liked, walking the dog if the weather was decent. Now, she was always running to her sister's or grabbing something from the studio. I didn't question it at first. Why would I? She and her sister talked often. But the strange thing was, every time I tried calling her during those outings, she never answered. Sometimes she'd text back an hour later, sometimes not at all. The excuses were always ready. "Sorry, I left my phone in the car." Or, "We were in the middle of something, I didn't hear it." And she always said it so easily, so convincingly, that for a while I let it go. But it kept happening. Enough that the pattern started forming in my head, like raindrops slowly creating a pool. Then came the canceled trip. We had planned a short anniversary getaway. A quiet cabin upstate, just the two of us. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was our tradition. Every year since we got married, We picked a weekend close to our anniversary and escaped the city. I'd booked it months in advance. Lily had even circled the dates on the calendar with a little heart. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, she told me she couldn't go. A last-minute seminar, she said. Work's sending me upstate. Some outreach symposium thing. I'll be back Sunday night. I was disappointed, of course, but I didn't push. I asked if I could drive her or pick her up when she got back. She said no, it was being held at a retreat center, and they'd have shuttles and group transportation. I asked what the seminar was about. She paused. Community partnerships. Grant writing. Boring stuff, she said with a half laugh. You wouldn't want to sit through it. I let it go at the time. But the next week, when I asked her how it went, she blinked at me for a second too long before answering. Like she needed a moment to remember the version of the story she'd already told. Oh, it was fine, she said. Mostly just panels. Nothing exciting. But when I asked who she roomed with, assuming it was a shared space kind of retreat, she hesitated. I had a private room. I think they overbooked, so I lucked out, she said. Another pause. Another casual redirection. Another piece of the puzzle I tried to set aside but couldn't forget. By then, I'd started checking things I never used to. I glanced at her phone screen when she was scrolling through it beside me. Not snooping, just noticing. Noticing that she flinched slightly when I walked into the room. That she started putting her phone face down on the table. That she turned off previews on her lock screen. She'd never been like that before. The irony is, I wasn't looking to catch her in anything. I didn't want to. But every time I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, another small moment pushed against that illusion. I remember one Sunday, this was about a month after the gala, I woke up early and found her already dressed. She said she was meeting her sister for brunch and then heading to a studio walkthrough for an upcoming installation. I asked if she wanted me to come. She smiled tight-lipped and said it's mostly a work thing. You'd be bored. An hour after she left, I called her sister. She didn't pick up but texted me later, "Hey. Haven't seen Lily this week, everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. When Lily got back that evening, she had takeout in her hands and that same perfume trailing behind her like smoke. She curled up next to me on the couch like nothing had happened. Asked if I wanted to watch something light. Kissed the top of my head. Smiled. And all I could do was nod because the alternative, saying what I was really thinking, felt like standing at the edge of a cliff without knowing how deep the drop went. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listing every moment that hadn't made sense. The new makeup. The bathroom calls. The missed sister brunch. The seminar she couldn't describe. The unreadable texts. The face-down phone. The constant feeling that I was always 2 steps behind in a story I was supposed to be part of. I didn't have proof. Not then. But I had something else, something maybe worse. I had doubt. And once you let doubt into your marriage, it doesn't leave. It builds a home. It grows legs and hands and starts rearranging everything. Suddenly, every memory gets rewritten. Every silence feels loaded. Every smile feels suspicious. I wanted to be wrong. God, I needed to be wrong. But in the silence of those long nights, I couldn't help but feel it deep in my bones. Something was broken. And she was the only one who knew where the cracks had started. They say you should be careful what you go looking for, because once you find it, you can't unsee it. For weeks, maybe months, I've been living in this strange in-between place. Not quite denial, not quite acceptance. I told myself I was being cautious. That I was waiting for the right moment. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that the person I loved most was already gone, and worse, had been pretending to be there the whole time. But life has a way of revealing itself when you stop chasing answers and just listen. It was a rainy Saturday. One of those days when the sky feels too low and even the dog doesn't want to go outside. Lily was out again. Studio walkthrough, she said, though I hadn't bothered to ask for details. Her stories had gotten blurrier lately, like watercolor left out in the rain. I didn't fight it. Didn't ask. Not anymore. I was cleaning the basement. Not for any particular reason, just *ling time, trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. I figured maybe organizing old documents, taxes, photo albums, the junk we swore we'd throw out and never did, maybe all that would keep my mind from spiraling. That's when I found it. Tucked between the pages of an old art history book, one of Lily's, from her grad school days, was an envelope. Just a plain white envelope, yellowed at the corners. No name, no label. Just there. Forgotten, or maybe hidden. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity, that dangerous, persistent thing, pushed me over the edge. Inside, there was a single Polaroid photo. It took my brain a moment to process what I was seeing. Lily, wearing lingerie I didn't recognize, lying on a bed I'd never seen. Hotel room based on the curtains and the sterile artwork on the wall. Next to her was a man. Not just any man. The man from the gala. The same tailored suit, now rumpled. His arm around her waist. Her head resting on his shoulder. Her expression not surprised, not accidental, comfortable. An asterisk, mate. I stared at it for a long time. Not in shock, no, I think part of me already knew. But with a kind of hollow clarity. Like the room around me had dropped 10 degrees and the world had stopped bothering to lie. The timestamp on the photo was in the corner, printed in red ink like the old cameras used to do. It was the same weekend as her retreat. The same weekend she told me she'd be attending seminars on grant writing and arts outreach. And there she was. In a bed that wasn't ours. With a man who wasn't me. That alone would have been enough. More than enough. But there was more in the envelope. A folded page handwritten. On thick, creamy paper, the kind Lily always used when she wrote thank you cards or holiday letters. Her handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. It wasn't a letter addressed to anyone. Just a single page of words. A confession, in a way. I hate how much I look forward to our time. It makes me feel dangerous and alive and selfish. Every time I leave, I promise myself it's the last time. But I can't stay away. What we have is too real. Too rare. With Dan, it's like I'm trapped inside a story I didn't write. With you, I'm myself. I feel like I'm speaking my own language again. I know this can't last forever, but I'm not ready to let it go yet. Even if it means lying. Even if it means hiding. Please don't stop waiting for me. I read it 3 times before I put it down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, the envelope in my lap, that photo looking up at me like a window into someone else's life. A life she'd built in parallel to ours. A performance she'd kept going with precision and poise. Like she was rehearsing for a role and I'd been the set piece. That night I said nothing. She came home late. Said the walkthrough ran long. That the artist had brought wine and they'd all stayed to discuss the installation plan. Her eyes sparkled, her cheeks flushed. She seemed relaxed. Even happy. I remember thinking how natural it was for her to lie. She kissed me goodnight, told me she loved me. And I said it back. But something in me had gone quiet. Like a light had been switched off for good. I spent the next few days pretending nothing had changed. Not because I was in denial, but because I needed to understand. I wanted to see how deep the performance went. I watched her carefully. How easily she navigated our routine. Coffee in the morning. A kiss on the forehead. Have a good day. She laughed at my jokes, asked about work, complained about the dog chewing her sandals again. Played her part so perfectly it made me wonder how long she'd been doing it. And then, at night, I'd sit alone with that envelope in the drawer next to my bed, wondering who she really wrote that letter for. Him? Herself? Or maybe no one at all. Maybe she just needed to say it somewhere. Leave it somewhere safe, somewhere stupid. Somewhere she thought I'd never look. But I found it. And it changed everything. There's this moment when a dam breaks, not all at once, but with a single crack. The pressure builds, the cracks spread, and eventually the whole thing gives in. That's what happened to me. The proof didn't hit like a bomb. It seeped in, slowly and steadily, until the version of my life I believed in dissolved like sugar in water. I started questioning everything. Did she ever love me, really? Or was I just the steady background she needed while she chased whatever thrill made her feel alive? Was it just him? Or were there others? What did she say about me when she was with him? Did she mock me? Pity me? Or worse, forget I even existed? I wanted to confront her. Wanted to throw the photo in her face, demand an explanation, demand tears, guilt, some kind of reckoning. But I didn't. Not yet. Because deep down I knew it wouldn't be enough. She'd find a way to spin it. She was good at that. Smooth. Measured. She'd say it was a mistake. A moment of weakness. That she didn't mean for it to happen. That it didn't mean anything. But it meant something. You don't lie that well about something that means nothing. So I waited. I started watching more closely. Listening between her words. Testing her stories gently, subtly. Not because I needed more proof, but because I needed to know how far she was willing to take the lie. The answer? All the way. And somehow that hurt more than the photo ever could. They say you don't really know someone until you see what they've hidden, not what they show, not what they confess, but what they tuck away in places they assume you'll never look. For me, it started with the attic. It wasn't even intentional. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a power cord, just one of those old adapters that mysteriously disappears into a black hole the second you need it. The kind of thing you check every drawer and closet for before you realize it's probably in the attic, covered in dust and buried under fake Christmas trees. Our attic was a disaster. We hadn't cleaned it since we moved in 7 years ago. Just boxes stacked haphazardly, plastic tubs full of forgotten things. Old coats, childhood books, decor for holidays we barely celebrated anymore. And then there was the metal box. It wasn't labeled. Wasn't even closed properly. It sat beneath a broken fan and a cracked suitcase. The kind of thing you could easily overlook. But something about it caught my eye, the way it had been shoved toward the back, hidden just enough to make someone assume it was junk. I pulled it out and opened it without thinking. Inside were keys. A ring. A journal. The keys were unremarkable. One was for a door lock, one maybe for a car. But the ring. It stopped me cold. It was plain, silver, worn with age. And engraved faintly on the inside were the initials MH. I didn't recognize it. I'd never seen Lily wear it. Never heard her mention it. I turned to the journal. The first page was dated almost a decade ago. March 3rd. I met her at a lecture in Tacoma. She asked a question about the ethics of modern art that stopped the room cold. She wasn't like anyone I'd ever met, sharp, dry, impossible to predict. I didn't think she'd call me back. But she did. I flipped forward. May 17th. Lily stayed the night. I watched her sleep and wondered if maybe I could finally stop looking for something more. Maybe this is what it's supposed to feel like. Like gravity. Page after page. Dates. Descriptions. Memories. They weren't dramatic. They weren't erotic. They were tender. Observant. Real. The kind of writing that only comes from someone deeply in it. His name was Mel. And from what I could tell, they had been involved for years, long before I ever met her. But what struck me more than the love was the unraveling. October 2nd. She started pulling away. Says she's overwhelmed with work, that she's not sleeping well. But she won't say what's really wrong. I asked her if there's someone else. She didn't answer. November 11th. I asked her again. She looked at me with this strange mixture of guilt and detachment and said, "You always knew this couldn't last forever." December 4th. I tried to end things. She cried. Told me she was afraid of becoming someone she didn't recognize. I didn't understand what she meant until now. She's already become that person. And then, February 9th. She said if I ever told anyone, she'd make me look like the villain. That no one would believe me. That she could erase me if she had to. I stopped reading. Not because I was done, but because my hands had started to shake. I stared at the journal in my lap, the words swimming on the page, and tried to make sense of the person described there. The Lily in those pages wasn't just someone who cheated. She wasn't someone who made a mistake. She was someone who engineered her life. Someone who curated reality like an art exhibit, showing only the corners she approved of, keeping the rest in shadow. Mel's last entry was dated a few weeks before Lily and I got engaged. She said goodbye. Not with sadness, not with apology. Just finality. Like a business transaction closing. She told me I'd always be part of her origin story, but not her future. I remember sitting there for a long time after that, the attic silent except for the creak of the floorboards. I couldn't stop thinking about the word erase. Lily had erased this man from her life. Erased the ring, the letters, the stories. Tucked them into a box and buried them behind Christmas decorations. But more than that, she'd erased the version of herself that he had known. It made me wonder how many versions of Lily existed. Was I the stable one? The safe life? The man she could marry, show off to colleagues, build a curated existence with? Was I a costume change? Had Mel been the real thing? Or just a warm-up? I didn't know. And the more I tried to fit the pieces together, the more I realized I didn't even have the right puzzle. I kept thinking back to our early days, the way Lily seemed so perfectly suited for me, like a reflection of my best self. She liked the same obscure music, quoted the same authors, smiled at the same quiet jokes no one else caught. But now I wondered, was that all by design? Had she studied me the way she studied Mel? Adapted to me the same way? I went back to the ring. MH? It was simple. Unadorned. Like a promise made in private. I started digging. Quietly. Carefully. I searched old emails, calendars, contacts she'd long since deleted. Mel's name never appeared. But there were gaps, months where she traveled, friends she visited whose stories didn't align when I casually asked them years later. One of those friends told me Lily had spent a summer off the grid in the mountains before she met me. That she'd been rebuilding herself. I used to think that was poetic. Now it sounded surgical. That week I started sleeping in the guest room. I told Lily I was having back pain. That the mattress was too soft. She believed me or pretended to. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still texted me midday. "How's your meeting? Don't forget dinner with Carly on Thursday." still moved through our life like everything was fine. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about a man no one knew existed. A man who had loved her, believed her, and had been buried in a metal box. I don't know what happened to Mel after that last journal entry. But I know this, Lily didn't lose him. She discarded him. And once I realized that, I couldn't see her the same way. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because suddenly the story had shifted. She wasn't just someone who had betrayed me. She was someone who had rehearsed for this. And I needed to know what else she was hiding. If finding Mel's journal had cracked the surface. What I found next shattered the foundation completely. It was early spring. The house was in that strange in-between state. Sunlight peeking through the blinds like an apology. But the room still felt cold. Lily had been quieter lately. Not distant exactly. Just preoccupied. She said work was chaotic. New funding cycles, new installations, late nights. I knew better now. I didn't argue anymore. I let her tell me whatever she needed to hear herself say. It was on a Sunday when I went up to the attic again. This time I wasn't looking for anything. I just couldn't stop myself. The first time I'd gone up there, I found a version of Lily I hadn't known existed. Part of me wondered, hoped maybe that I'd imagined it, that I'd exaggerated what I read, that maybe Mel had been dramatic, unwell, wrong. But that Sunday I found the box. It was a plain gray storage box, nothing special. I almost passed it by until I noticed the label in Lily's handwriting. J. Archive. Julie. Our daughter. I sat on the attic floor and opened it. Inside were old drawings, school reports, birthday cards. Things you'd expect. A tiny pair of ballet slippers from when she was 6. A certificate from her second grade spelling bee. The usual nostalgia. Harmless things. Then I found the envelope. It was sealed. Heavy, thick. My name wasn't on it. But Julie's was. Handwritten. In Lily's careful, elegant script. The postmark was from 2 years ago. Never mailed. I knew I shouldn't read it. It wasn't meant for me. But I did. And it was nothing like I expected. Julie, if you're reading this, then I didn't get to explain things in person. Or maybe I was too much of a coward to do it face to face. There's something you need to know. I didn't want to be a mother. Not in the usual sense, not in the fairy tale cookie-cutter way people write about in parenting books. I thought maybe it would come with time, with you. But it never did. I did my best to perform the role. I made the lunches, showed up at plays, clapped at graduations. But I was acting. I was always acting. It wasn't your fault. You were beautiful. Smart. You had his eyes. You made people fall in love with you without even trying. But I kept waiting for something inside me to click into place, to feel bonded in the way everyone said I would. And it never came. Sometimes I worried you were like me, that you'd grow up and find yourself standing in a room full of people who love you and feel nothing. That's the part that scares me the most. Not what I did, but what you might inherit. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you deserved. I don't know how long I sat there after reading it. The air felt heavy, like the attic itself was trying to crush me. I'd always thought Lily was a complicated woman. Complex, yes. Private, yes. But I never thought she was detached from Julie. Distant, maybe, during the teen years. But she was always there, at the school, at the soccer games, helping with college essays. She made Julie's Halloween costumes by hand. She hosted those over-the-top birthday parties with handmade decorations and gluten-free cupcakes, because one of the kids had allergies. Was that all performance? Did Julie know? I didn't mention the letter to Lily. Not yet. Not directly. But I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my daughter. Julie was in her junior year of college, living off campus in a tiny apartment with too many roommates and not enough heat. She picked up after 3 rings. Her voice was cheerful, distracted, maybe, but warm. Still my girl. We caught up for a few minutes. I asked how her classes were going. She told me about an art history professor who spoke entirely in metaphors and how her roommate's cat had knocked a lamp into the bathtub. Then I asked her something I hadn't planned to. Has your mom ever written you something strange? There was a pause. Then, you mean the letter? My heart caught in my throat. She sent me a letter a couple years ago, Julie said slowly. I didn't open it. You didn't. No. I don't know. Something about it felt off. She mailed it to my dorm. No return address. Just said Julie on the front. It felt heavy, you know? Like I'd regret reading it. I didn't say anything. Dad, she said, why are you asking? I found something similar, I said carefully. In the attic. There was a silence on the line that made my stomach twist. Then Julie said something I'll never forget. She mentioned a place once. Fisher Hill. Said it was where everything started to break. Fisher Hill. I knew the name vaguely. It was a small town north of here, tucked along the coast. We'd never been there together. Lily never talked about it. Not until now, not in any way that I'd remembered. But after I got off the phone, I dug through old paperwork. Bank records. Car rentals. Calendars. And there it was. A rental agreement under a name I didn't recognize. A woman named Elaine Harper had leased a cottage in Fisher Hill for 2 weeks, 6 years ago, the exact time Lily had told me she was at a wellness retreat for anxiety and burnout. It all fit too well. The timing. The secrecy. The alternate name. I kept digging. Property tax records, archived listings, public directories. The cottage had been owned by a couple who ran short-term rentals for creative retreats, off-the-grid types. Writers. Artists. People looking to disappear for a while. No phones. No outside contact. Cash preferred. It wasn't a retreat. It was a hiding place. I sat with that knowledge for a while. What had she been hiding from? Me? Herself? Had Julie's birth triggered something in Lily she'd never recovered from? Or was Julie just another mask she wore? Another identity she tried on before discarding it like Mel? I couldn't ask Lily. Not yet. Not without giving away what I knew. So I sat with it. With the letter meant for Julie. With the name Elaine Harper echoing through my head. With the slow, sickening realization that my wife had lived multiple lives and in each one, she left pieces behind like breadcrumbs for me to find too late. I used to believe Lily's distance came from ambition or introversion or some tangle of past trauma she hadn't shared. But now I wasn't so sure. Now it felt deliberate. Calculated. She hadn't just lied to me. She'd withheld herself from her own daughter. And as much as it broke me to admit it, a part of me began to wonder if Lily had never wanted to be a mother, had she ever really wanted to be a wife? Or had I just been her next costume?